Before starting the talk, I would like to say something about group meetings. We've had them now for 4 or 5 retreats, and people seem to like them, so we have continued with them. When we were discussing this at great length, off and on, over the past, before starting it, there were always some people who were concerned that the silence of a retreat, which is one of the very precious aspects of it, may be impacted by, instead of 2 people talking, 6 people being together, maybe talking with loud voices or laughing. And indeed this has at times happened. So when we do have a group meeting, which we are planning to continue, can we, all of us, be sensitive to that we're not the whole universe in that room, but that there are people sitting quietly. If someone is very sensitive to sound, because we do not have a single soundproofed room in this building, the meeting is not soundproof, as all of us know. The meeting, when there are 5 people, takes 50 minutes. Sometimes we go to 55. So if one is waiting for a private meeting and is very sensitive to sound, could one sit someplace else beside the solarium? Although we do have the fan there that can be turned out, that can turn out some white noise to cover it somewhat. Balcony or this room may be a little bit more distant, but for us inside the room, let us be aware to keep our voices down. And we can remind each other, because in the intensity of talking about something we may forget. This is day 5 of the February 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. Here's some of the questions. When thinking violent thoughts, I can see that they come out of the memory stored in the mind and body of the violent past. When I'm friendly with people, happy with them, I don't feel that this comes out of memory. It seems to happen right now. Later on, this all happened in a group meeting. Later on, the question emerged, does goodness come out of memory, out of stored memory? Like violent behavior, violent thoughts seem to do, come out of memory. What makes it difficult looking at violent thoughts that go on in myself is that I immediately think that this is bad. What does it mean something is bad? You only seem to be talking about bad, harmful kind of conditionings. Isn't there also a good conditioning that helps us to do good things for each other and not harm each other? Live in goodness with each other. Is there a conditioning for that? So much is said and written about a mind free of thoughts, a silent mind. What is a silent mind? And the question left over from yesterday, what is the difference between listening to the dripping rain and hearing someone having difficulty with their breathing? There's a difference in listening for me in that. There's no dripping rain today. No wind, no birds singing. So can memory evoke those sounds? One can also look freely at memory. It doesn't need to drive one unawares. Question was, what's the difference between listening to dripping rain and someone breathing noisily or with difficulty next to me? And there's usually a consensus among people that it's much simpler, much easier to listen to wind in the trees or rain dripping from the roof, resounding with the wooden deck or splashing into the soft earth. Listening to that in openness and listening to someone breathing, for instance, or moving around, making noises, speaking loudly, the sound of that coming out of a room. It is different listening to human noises, voice, and so forth, and the rain, isn't it? We're right now not thinking about marvelous voice of a singer or player of the violin. We'll leave that aside right now. We're talking about noises that irritate the mind, because that makes probably for the difference in listening. That the one listening to the jay chirping or the rain dripping is without irritation. It doesn't come from someone one knows or projects things onto. It also doesn't have the quality of thought in it. It has a wholeness about it. Natural sounds have a wholeness to them, not cut up by thought, intention, not easy to project onto our own problems, which is much easier with another human being. Someone breathing noisily in the room, well, one can just watch the thoughts that come up. They may be subtle, disguised, or one has never listened to them, but they say something. Why does he have to do that, or she? She or he with their voice or noisy breathing invades my space. Why should I have to put up with it? Can't he or she control themselves a little bit more, be a little bit more sensitive? And such comments arouse feelings, sensations, emotions throughout this organism, which instantly affect the listening. listening may not even be open anymore. The rain may not be heard anymore, because now what is listened to are the inner comments with their emotions. Almost beckoning to have some action, leaving the room or telling the person. I may be exaggerating, but this is observable in oneself. When there is irritation, and the sound of the irritation within adds to the sound that irritates one, compounds the sound of the loud breathing, the sound of inner irritation, the noise of it, we could say, may become so noisy that one doesn't even hear the breathing anymore. So a challenging question would be, can one indeed listen to whatever irritating noises emanate from another human being with the same openness as one listens to the birds singing, the wind moving the branches, the rain pattering on the deck? Watchful, open to what comes up as comment and thought and image, and in seeing it, not going with it. When there's a direct seeing or listening to these inner voices, they may fade out very quickly. And then there's just the loud breathing or the sounds of voices. It has impact on the nervous system, so does the sound of the wind. Sometimes we have incredible storms here. I've never heard anyone complain about the noise of that. People usually love the energy that is felt with crashing of thunder, trees, their noise of bending and creaking. One can also experiment in one's mind. What if there was a rare bird in Springwater which makes sounds like someone breathing heavily? Wouldn't one be thrilled to have heard that bird? There's a woodpecker here, or a couple, who make sounds like a drum going. One wonders if any drummer could ever drum that regularly and that quickly as that woodpecker. First time I heard it, I'd never heard this before. I was sure it was a human being drumming or doing something of that sort. So is it possible to listen without comment, without projection, even though these are programmed to come up? These programs are wired into us, whatever verb you use, for how this gets lodged in the mind and body. So it runs, it's triggered. But the triggering can be observed. And it doesn't have to continue. When the awareness is there to listen to what else is there beside the triggered program. And to be with whatever is felt about an impacted nervous system that can also be listened to, felt. before this retreat, we had a furnace fan that ran, that some of us felt became quite torturous. And whenever it would turn off, it was a tremendous relief, even though one had not been angry at the furnace fan. There was no such emotion triggered, but the sheer ending of it was a relief to this whole organism. So sounds do impact the nerves and whatever else. It's not to be denied. And with a lot of silence, it seems that the whole organism gets more sensitive to sound, more finely tuned, picks up more stuff than one normally hears. That's why it's so good to be sensitive of each other in the way we walk and close doors and talk when there is talking. The question of what is bad or what is evil has come up several times during this retreat. Probably because of the closeness and presentness of a war that we're aware of. There were other wars on a smaller scale going on all along that we never had news of or heard not about. But with this one, and the stark painting of evil that we're fighting, the question has come up frequently since that war has started. What is evil? What is badness? What do we mean something is bad? Or someone is bad, or I myself am bad? I personally don't like to use those words. But we're using them differently now. We're trying to shed light on what we mean, what is associated with these words. We're not labeling anything. We're looking at this label, what it does, what it implies, evil or bad. Can we look? Question it? We talked about it yesterday, that we've heard it all our life, being used on us, on others. Bad meaning something not acceptable, maybe not even condonable, forgivable. It is associated, isn't it, with rejection. The bad one being rejected, outcast, banned. In our first experiences of it, banned from love, from the parents maybe, elders. Also subject to punishment. Badness is associated with punishment, maybe severe punishment, and justified punishment for evil doing, being bad. It deserves that. It calls for it. it may set an example not to be bad if one knows and sees that badness is being punished severely. So implied in there is also fear of it being done to one, badness or evil. Or if oneself would admit that one has bad thoughts or done something evil, which is rejectable by society, by parents, then the fear of punishment, of being found out. Maybe not if not by the parents, then by God, because God sees everything. Nothing can be hidden from him, we have learned, if we've been brought up in that faith of a all-seeing and punishing God. A God to be feared for his punishing qualities, capacities. According to the Bible, the Old Testament, the first evil act or bad act leading to banishment from the paradise. Angel with a sword driving out the evildoers. Having been told what is good and bad and not to do the bad and doing it due to seduction through the evil one, the snake, Satan, the woman, seducing one to do evil and incurring the wrath of God. All of this, if we've been raised with these stories, lives someplace in us. Fear of sin is in that too. Badness, evil, sin. Fear of hell. Condemnation. This is all what is associated with something being bad. The deed that is bad is what has been said is bad to us. Or is something intrinsically evil, intrinsically bad, like killing one's fellow human being. One would think so. And yet, killing certain human beings can be a good thing to do if these human beings are called bad, evil. Then to kill them is good. So it's a confusing thing, what is bad? What is bad under one circumstance may not be considered bad under another. Not to do what one is told not to do. That's how it starts in the family, doesn't it? So the person who said, it's so hard for me to look at violent thoughts because I immediately label them as bad and then I can't look at them. Can that be aired out? What is it that is so frightening about looking at a violent thought? Is there this implied fear of punishment? Being banned from loved ones? Shamed? Outcasted? It's all implied in that. And our feelings are very vague maybe about it, but if one opens up a question, lets things come up to the surface, then one can see what it is one is afraid of. Because we talked at length yesterday about the image one has of being good. And transgressing against that image is bad. And therefore, let's not look at the transgression because I need to maintain my good image. Because if I cling to that and keep to that image, then I will be safe. Safe from punishment, safe from being outcast, deprived of love. And yet violent thoughts go on beneath the surface and do their unwholesome thing. Because whatever is not aired in the light of day, seen, felt, admitted to be happening, has a toxic quality throughout this organism and mind. So if there are violent thoughts, to look at them. It doesn't have to be elaborated. To look, and if there's fear of looking, then wonder, why this fear? What am I afraid of? And let the thing come up, the fears, the images, the imaginings. So that this does not operate subterraneously in a toxic way. Because the fear is also that if I allow myself to look at a violent thought, I may be acting on it. I may become violent. Maybe we've been told that. Actually, remember, there's an amazing thing in being in a Buddhist center. One day a poem was circulated for parents who have children, that this would be a good poem or a prayer to recite with children maybe before mealtime. I don't remember it verbatim, but it was something like, I am a link in the Buddha's golden chain of links. I promise to keep this chain bright all the time. I promise to keep my thoughts clean, or something like that, which just seems so amazingly dangerous to impose upon children. Because we don't have clean thoughts only, already when we're little. A hurt suffered almost with a lawfulness, may be exceptions to it, but results in the urge for revenge, for taking it out on someone else. Maybe not the one who hurt one, but the weaker one, little sister or brother. Or later on it may be postponed. The mind has this capacity to postpone, but keep storing. And then we talked about it yesterday at a moment, the thing breaking forth, revenge for hurt suffered, pain suffered, or humiliation or whatever. So we are indeed being warned not to think bad thoughts. That this in itself is already evil, doing evil. There's something like this also in the New Testament. And looking at it in a certain way, one can say, there's not much difference between doing in one's adversaries, like one person said, boiling them in hot oil, and doing it. There is a difference. But it's on a continuum, isn't it? Maybe not. We can discuss it. But not to feel that one is free of all of this stuff because one isn't acting on it, and yet the thoughts are there, which could turn into action if the controls are loosened up for some reason or other, sometimes in drinking or whatever, or too overwhelming a stimulus to break down the controls, and the rage pours forth. So the question came up whether violent thoughts or violent action indeed come out of the storehouse of memory. Collective memory, personal memory. Things that have happened don't get lost, they're stored. No agreement on where it's stored, whether in the brain, throughout the tissue, or in memory fields that we live in that affect us over long distances. Distance and time being no obstacle to the functioning of memory fields on human beings and animals. So in looking at all of this as we're doing here in individual meetings and group meetings, can this strong urge, strong drive in us to blame, to find fault, blame ourselves or find fault with others, to point fingers at others or ourselves, can that give way to looking how we're functioning, how we're driven? Memory can be seen. It's not some vague, shadowy thing. It may be because it may be very suppressed, but it can also become very visible. Like a live scene relived. And the connection is there. This is what makes me behave like this right now. I mean, this which is seen in memory. Often this brings quite a relief. And the relief is from guilt for being bad, being the initiator of bad actions, which is what our religious training has led us to believe, that we have the choice between good and evil. And if we choose evil, we do it because we want to be that way, and therefore punishable by God, or karma, or whatever the doctrine may be. Can one wonder about this being the initiator, the doer, even though this is how it looks to the conditioned eye and mind, which does not see the network of conditioning in which we're all caught if there's no awareness? Let me break that network, at least for that moment. Then we don't have to fight each other, try to straighten each other out, sermonize against each other, throw bombs on each other, but find out what commonly makes us do the things we do and has been making us do the things we've done since time immemorial. That's why it's so much more helpful not to use loaded words like evil and bad, but to describe what it is that we're doing or that someone else is doing. So the emotions aren't already washing over us before we can really look at the whole situation. The rapist, the murderer. There were two questions connected with this. One was, you always talk about our painful, harmful conditioning, violent conditioning. Isn't there also a good conditioning that makes us do good things to each other, help each other? There is. We have. But that's what a lot of child raising is, trying to condition the child to be good. Sometimes with strange means, which I have reported yesterday, which is not what the person meant, not through scare and terror and fear, make one be good. Is there some other way? Because there's, in modern psychology, is a whole blossoming field of behavior modification, where only good, what is considered arbitrarily maybe in that segment of society, what is considered good will be rewarded, acknowledged, stroked, and to try to prevent the person from doing something that is considered bad. So there is very little quote-unquote possibility for quote-unquote bad responses, and good responses are amply rewarded. I don't know. I don't think this was meant. I've been in touch with someone who has gone through behavior modification, a person who's psychotic, and the results were frightening. And there was not, it was not the way it was said to be, that undesirable behavior would not be punished. It was punished. It led to tremendous confusion in that human being. They didn't know what to do anymore. But there may be other cases where it works well. Well in terms of what our particular values are at that moment. I don't know whether behavior modification questions the values of being nice, polite, obedient, conformist, fitting into society, non-aggressive in the midst of an aggressive society. Is there good conditioning to be polite, friendly? What came up in the group meeting where this was discussed was, to the extent that parents who are with children are friendly and polite and say things in a nice way, the children will pick it up, because we're all imitative creatures. This is how we become conditioned. Just like little ducklings following the mother duck to the pond, learning to swim, or birds learning to raise and flap their wings because they see the mother do it or the father. I've been astonished observing our grandchildren at the incredible imitative potential in them for voice and expression, doing things. Someone that they admire and think a lot of, they want to do, act in the same way, talk in the same way. That's conditioning. Imitation is conditioning. But if one is rude or talks down to children and then tries to condition them to be polite, that's very confusing, isn't it? That's what we do, though. We don't think it through. We are not aware. We think, well, we have a right to be rude and angry at this moment because of the way the child behaved. And that anger is imitated. It will be imitated at one time or another. The other thing that came up was someone saying, in looking, it didn't just come from the top of the head, looking. When there's violent thoughts or angry thoughts and behavior, what is triggered right now seems to be closely connected with what is remembered. But when I feel friendly and open with people, it doesn't seem to come out of memory. It's just happening now in this way of openness in which we can be friendly and good with each other. Of course, we can remember that, and we can remember moments of friendliness that we shared with each other, moments of goodness. Will that memory make it more possible to be friendly and good again? Well, we have to find this out. We can't postulate anything. Maybe the more we are friendly and open with each other, forgiving, non-grudge bearing, the more likelihood there is of being that again. But will we be this again at the moment that angry memories come up and beckon to have revenge or grudge? Will then a memory of friendliness sweep that aside and open up to goodness? Or does there have to be an opening, first of all, in the midst of anger or depression or sadness? An opening, which means not totally caught in it. For a moment, not totally caught in it. And in that opening, seeing what is going on. The memory, the projection, the put down of oneself or others, the blame, the fault finding, and questioning all of that. Whether that has to keep running over and over and over. Maybe in such a moment of opening awareness, there may be a memory popping up of goodness that is remembered. Does that help then? Or is goodness there when we're not caught up in our remembered and projected problems? We have to find out. It's interesting to ask these questions, isn't it? And to watch. Not just here in a silent retreat, but as we live with each other, at work, at home, in the streetcar, on the subway, in the grocery market, or wherever. I don't feel that goodness and openness and lovingness is at all a conditioned state. Even though there can be memories of times of goodness, that is so. But when that works actively, alively, it doesn't come out of memory, it comes out of the bypassing of the memory of good and bad, right and wrong, past and future. The freedom from that may bring this lovingness and goodness in relationship with each other. With which we come to the last question that was read. One hears so much about a mind without thought, clear of thought or thinking, a silent mind. Is there such a thing as a silent mind? And if there is, what is it? Clearly talking breaks the silence. And yet, there can be talking out of a silent mind. The mind not being caught up in what one is, not caught up in thinking about oneself, not caught up in this whole incredibly complex edifice of me, of self, mine. That is the noise of the mind, the occupation, most of the time, of this mind. The energies traveling, as it were, to energize this whole edifice of me and mine and self. My fears, my wants, my needs, my past, my future, my badness, my goodness. And amazingly enough, it is possible that the energy not travel into that edifice at all. So it is not activated. It's not functioning, it's not operating. It's not eliminated or killed or extirpated or whatever. It's just not energized. The energy is being, not separate. The energy of everything. Not within, inside. There's no feeling of inside. The body is not a wall, an enclosure. One can say no separation, but where is separation? When this edifice isn't in action. It was also asked, what is conducive to bringing about this state, this way, this being? I don't know that answer. All that can be said that it's there when this edifice is not operating. When that is quiet, that's the quiet mind. Open to whatever is happening. Someone asked yesterday, could you then say it's always there even though we don't know it? And in probing a little bit and looking at it, the person said, well, actually, I want to be reassured. That's part of the edifice, wanting to be reassured. When the me, the self, is taking up the stage, and it usually fills the whole stage, then one could say, well, awareness is always there, but it's just part of talking, or speculating, or theorizing. But when the stage is empty, then there isn't even a stage. And then it's there. Everything is there. Not something special. Everything. Not me at the center of it. It's what was also discussed in one meeting. I got to find my center, the center within me. But when the me is out of commission, as it were, there's no center within me because there's no me. So then there's no one who has that. That's all part of thinking in terms of the structure. We will end here for today.